UNESCO has acceded to Palestinian and Arab demands to recognise the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron and the Tomb of Rachel as Palestinian sites, not Jewish sites. And as an historian, I am outraged at this blatant misuse of history for propaganda purposes, flying in the face of what we historians should always respect above all else, the objective facts. Israel and her supporters, Jew and Gentile alike, are in the forefront of something even more important than that. For today, they stand, I believe, in the very vanguard of the centuries-old struggle for truth over falsehood, knowledge over ignorance, and therefore, ultimately, of civilization over barbarism.
First, I want to talk to you just some brief points about how the antipathy on campuses towards Israel has come about. How has this perfect storm happened? Why is it happening on campuses in the first place? Israel is the Jewish state. It is the Jew among nations. And those of us who watch this and who watch it carefully realize that Zionism and hatred of Zionism has become a cover for those who really have a basic antipathy towards Jews. The idea of social justice is coddled and shaped by the left on campuses. And what it does is make them feel that they have a commitment to helping people, that the victims of the world have to be helped. And the favored victim on campus these days, since apartheid was ended in South Africa, is the Palestinians. Anything that is done for their benefit is fine, even if it means dismantling Israel. And one of the pressing problems on campuses that I deal with in my book in a whole chapter is this incredible double standard on campuses about who may say what about whom. That some people can say anything, as we've seen, about Jews and people that are perceived not to need protection, even when it's vile. You saw some of those posters. You felt that palpable fear that would be on the part of those poor students that were being, aggressively in your face attacked for being Jewish, nothing more, or for being perceived as supporting Israel. That in itself is not a crime. The Palestinian cause is important, but it is not the only cause on earth, and we have to let it be known.
Do you think it can be useful for diffusing this sort of poisonous speech if there are organizations that include both well-meaning Jewish and well-meaning Muslim students?
Not just useful, absolutely invaluable. And that's part of what we're trying to do with the Friends of Israel initiative. None of the senior people in our organisation is Jewish, and I think the more that people can say, look, this is not just the job of the Jews to stand up for truth and to fight falsehood on the campus and aggression and viciousness. It's the job of everybody. It's the job of anybody who believes in a civil society, and so I think that's important.
Pre-1967, Israel was, the underdog, and it got the sympathy of the left, certainly. Since 1967, when the whole image has changed, and it has in fact become a miniature version of the United States and perceived as being the establishment and the power, the trade unions have typically been leftist and liberal and fight the power. That's why they're formed, to go against the man. Well, Israel and America are the man now.
The General Assembly of the UN, you can't spell unethical without UN, asked the International Court of Justice to issue a ruling, an opinion on the barrier. I'm not going to go into the whole ruling, it's involved. But they wrote one thing in their preface, in their introduction, that's germane to what I have to say today. They stated, in these words and clearly, that Article 51 of the UN Charter, which guarantees every state the right of self-defense, does not apply to Israel in its conflict with the Palestinians. In other words, if Israel defends itself against Palestinian terror, it is a war criminal state. Or to put it in simpler terms, if Jews defend their lives, they're criminals. Ahmadinejad says, I want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. What he really means is, I want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. When Hamas says we want to kill all the Jews and destroy Israel, what they really mean is, we want to kill all the Jews and destroy Israel. When Abu Mazen, the head of the PA, says we want to live in peace, coexistence, and understanding, what he really means is we want to kill all the Jews and destroy Israel. First, Iran. Iran, as a potential nuclear threat, is existential to Israel. Israel cannot survive a nuclear strike, and therefore, as Iran marches toward acquisition of nuclear weapons technology, it already has the delivery technology, Israel comes under immediate existential threat. Soon, Iran will have missiles that can reach Western Europe, and shortly beyond that, they've already developed, they haven't fully operationally tested, a missile that can reach the east coast of the United States. They say there are two chances for peace in the Middle East: the natural and the supernatural. The natural is that Messiah is going to come.
Today, it is a genocidal anti-Zionism that characterizes anti-Semitism today, and it has gathered such force, such momentum, such speed, that it is certainly meant to delegitimize, weaken, ultimately destroy the Jewish state. We agree, Israel is under very profound and existential siege. Before Israel constructed the security fence, had Americans been attacked and wounded in the same numbers proportionally that Israelis were, do you know how many there would be dead in America? 48,700 Americans would have been dead, and 340,000 Americans would have been wounded, and Israel was shamed for coming up with a solution to cut down this number. Shamed. We live at a time when objective truth doesn't really matter anymore. Only big lies matter. Only brainwashing matters. Everything is, quote, relative. Propaganda is the order of the day. And multicultural relativism is the mantra of the day. In fact, Obama, my president, has now said that you can't use the word Islam or radical Islam in official documents. I mean, Orwell couldn't have made this up. As we've heard, and let me confirm, Israel is not an apartheid nation state. It is not a Nazi aggressive nation state. It is just trying to defend itself. So now Israel is not just a bad guy, or one of the bad guys. It is the baddest guy on the block. Such propaganda ultimately leads to murders and then to genocide. That's the nature of propaganda. Last year, Israeli Apartheid Week was held in 7 cities across Canada, as you know. These protesters, those who want to boycott and divest in Israel, they really wish to be seen as anti-racists. Hell no. By holding Arab and Muslim countries to a much lower ethical standard, and by condemning their inhabitants to continued Islamist barbarism, which includes slavery and racism, and gender and religious apartheid, they fail every test of non-racism. Their anti-Zionism is racism, both against Jews and against Muslims. The majority of honor killings worldwide are Muslim on Muslim crimes, and yes, Hindus and Sikhs do commit this crime, but they rarely do so in the West. The battle for women's rights is central, key to the battle for Europe and for Western values, key to the battle for Israel. It is a necessary part of true democracy, along with freedom of religion, tolerance of homosexuals, freedom of dissent, a free press. Here, then, is exactly where the greatest battle of the 21st century is joined: totalitarian barbarism versus vulnerable like those who made this conference happen, vulnerable civil libertarians in a democracy where there is dissent, where there is freedom of thought, where there is freedom of religion. We, the world's civilians, are now all Israelis. The same world that refused to stop the airplane hijackings and suicide killers which blew up countless Israelis, civilians have now inherited this whirlwind. As they say, it starts with the Jews, but it never ends with us.